You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, I got a couple of us with us tonight. We got Lisa, the mad scientist, the Occult Reject, the mad scientist. What is going on, Lisa? How are you?
I am good. Thank you for the invite. I'm very much looking forward to discussing Ethan's book along with you and Jen.
Oh, yeah.
And just the only thing to plug is some of the stuff that Ethan has contributed is amazing work to the occultresearchinstitute.org. And please check us out on that. It's occultresearchinstitute.org, and Ethan has contributed along with other people as well if you like to consume your content via literary methods.
Thank you very much. Yes, very well said. And next, we got Frater Jin the Ninja. What is going on, Frater?
Hey, boss. What's up? Hey, Cardinal, I should say.
Yes, Cardinal.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. Obviously, I was saying before, like anything to support Ethan. He's one of the rejects I've worked with. Many dozens and dozens. We've done dozens of shows at least together. So there's no way I couldn't come on. And so I'll let my plug just be, just like, subscribe, and obviously retweet the show, like Occult Rejects. But if you really want to check me out, you can. Threshold Saints, obviously, you can look that up. But yeah, just support the show, support Ethan's book, and I'm here for that. And thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Ethan. And yeah, I'm really excited, to be honest.
Thank you for coming on, man. If you weren't going to plug your show, I was going to say it anyway. So thank you. I appreciate it. And then finally, the man in the hour of the hour, we got Dr. Ethan Indigo.
I'll take philosopher or author.
Yeah, okay. We got author.
I don't want to claim, but I am very appreciative of the involvement with Occult Rejects, and I just really appreciate you guys including me and tolerating me.
Oh, tolerating you? Come on, man. You guys tolerate me.
I really appreciate you guys, Jen, Lisa, Nick. I thank you for being my friend. And hopefully I don't have an emotional breakdown on how much I love you guys and on how much I love marijuana. But I'll try to remain steady. I wrote, I've written several books. I wrote some fiction that I call pot fiction. And I'm trying to be silly with the pulp fiction genre, my own genre of pot fiction. And I also wrote Marijuana and the Prohibition of the Divine Feminine, which is nonfiction. And it sounds like a whole lot of woo, but I base this all on factual, historical, evidential, cultural, even one could say magical ideas that have been put forth. I wrote this a number of years ago with my friend from Mendocino, California. I have roots in Mendocino. It's like one of the old hippie dope capitals of California.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Triangle.
Yeah, I've heard of that place.
Yeah, I've grew up with a lot of marijuana, let's just say.
I'm sure.
So I want to thank Mendocino and thank James for his contribution to this book. And as I was formulating the idea for this presentation, I wanted to get some icing on the cake to make my idea and presentation as good as the Occult Rejects input and the Occult Rejects guests presentations. And I found some new ideas, and I just want to say for all the people who've been listening and providing all these great spiritual lessons, I just appreciate it. I enjoy all the lessons that I've been getting. And to that point, writing is spelling is magic, right? And
yes, it is.
there's maybe two different dynamics one could go about writing or spelling out this positive and negative kind of magic, and one might be considered a put on, and one might be considered, as I want to present today, a positive less on, right? Provide less on. And I love that word because it's kind of a little lesson into itself towards enlightenment.
That ON.
So
it is
the
interesting.
magic, sorry?
That ON. I always find that combination very interesting.
Oh, right. Yeah, that is interesting. And so some magic puts on more stuff we have to carry around, and other magic in regards to spelling is a lesson. So one of the original intentions of this book was not necessarily to explore certain things that I did explore. The original intent was to break really what is a cultural spell. And that being the idea of what is the oldest profession. And everyone kind of knows this. Over the centuries, there has been different kind of cultural conceptual ideas as to what was the oldest profession. Sometimes it was tailor. I find that compelling. Sometimes it was hunter, farmer, this, that, and the other. But only in the last little bit was it what it is today. And of course, it's really in regard to insulting one gender. And the oldest profession is certainly not prostitution. If we look at it from one example, if before there was money, when we were dealing with shells, and people might say, and it's pretty astute, that a hunter is the oldest profession, but no human being ever goes on an adventure, even hunting, without knowing that it has a healer at home. So learning to hunt or going on a hunt, the difference between a big bear and a human is the bear knows that if it gets a little slice, it could die of infection, and it has no one to help it. It can't even help itself. A human knows, even dogs, actually, they say they might have this level of confidence when facing other beings on hunts because they know they have a healer or a nurse at home. And so
the dog's like, I know the
nurse
human will take me somewhere if I get hurt.
Yeah. The dog knows too, even that it'll be taken care of. That level of confidence, that understanding, maybe that propelled humanity to places, that are different from many different animals originally, even. So we all grew up in a nursery, getting nursed. The nurse, that dual meaning of caretaker, healer, and our mother at the bosom, right? And then the secondary argument is, after there is money, well, where did these other people get money, right? An aspect of history is not that the blacksmiths and the milk cow owners, they weren't after the prostitutes. It was actually soldiering that enabled that type of thing to happen. And you could say even that soldiering, that is the original prostitution. I don't know if prostitution is the oldest. I don't know if prostitution is the oldest profession. I would never say something so base. In fact, I argue that nursing is the oldest profession, but soldiering is the oldest prostitute. So with that in mind, let's break some spells, because that is a cultural spell that we've all been put on by.
I just want to say real quick, do you think because I have thought about that, and I'm like, that really kind of downplays, oh, well, since it's the oldest profession, I mean, who cares? Oh, what's the big deal? They've been doing it since the beginning of time. It's never going to stop. You know what I'm saying? Like, it almost downplays or even accepts the whole thing, I think. Sorry.
It's no, thank you, Nick. It's degrading. It prevents degrading aspiration, maybe, and it presents degrading expectation. right? And women, the feminine has long suffered this, as we're going to explore it. And this idea, this notion, was never mentioned in any ancient Greek or ancient Roman society. This is a new idea. This cultural spell about this being the oldest profession is a new idea, and it was created. Nick, let's go with the let's start rolling these images that I have.
Awesome.
First, I want to just say that I present a little timeline in my book, Marijuana and the Prohibition of the Divine Feminine, but I begin with this. Essentially, marijuana, cannabis, hemp, all the same, have provided humanity with clothing, with food, with even material for shelter and nutrition, and even a medicine, and even a sacramental object. There's really nothing in the world that is this level of provider of resources that hemp can be illustrated, and even has the sacrament, and even has this narcotic or essence, if you will, that makes us feel good. So, I mean, there's nothing like the divine feminine in its resource presentation and the care in all the things that it provides, just in that simple respect. And it is arguably the tree. One could say, what's the sacred tree? Well, it might be a willow, it might be an oak, and it might be cannabis. So in recent decades, we've gotten better at analyzing chemicals, and we found out, I believe in 1960 something or so, is the only when we were able to isolate cannabinoids and THC. And it was found soon after that whether or not the mother was around cannabis, there is cannabinoids in human breast milk. And this is in, of course, very small amounts and are non-intoxicating. But it's theorized, and I think it makes sense, that this is meant to soothe any anxiety and enhance the appetite. Lisa, you probably know more about this than I do, right?
Just a little bit from the stuff that I've read. So from what I have read, and please, Jen, jump in because I'm pretty sure you know a lot about the science with it too, is that there is, I guess, the psychoactive component, which, you know, is more embodied by the THC, and then you have the soothing analgesic type of calming effect with what we now know as CBD, and that the plant itself has over 150 different components, and they all work in synergy together. And usually, I think with the different strains do different things, and so the higher the THC, the higher the psychoactive, the lower the soothing, calming, anti-anxiety. But the higher the CBD, the higher the the lower the anxiety, but the less the psychoactive. So when you talk about the cannabinoids, cannabinoids is naturally produced by the body itself, and yes, the mother does produce that as a calming effect for the baby, and then to increase milk uptake by the neonate. So yes, this is very, very true. We have cannabinoid receptors all over our body, from our brains, different parts of our brains, to our immune cells. So it's everywhere. Mm-hmm.
I'll just add this one thing really quick. I love that you brought up, Lisa, the galactagogic effect of hemp, because most people totally forget that, like that it does have this even though astrologically, and I don't know if you got into this, Ethan, and obviously I won't talk about it at all until you do, but for me, even the astrology is very masculine, but there's a quality of hemp as a whole plant, like maybe just taking it as a whole, that is very feminine. So it is interesting because when we do talk about the astrology of it, there is a quality that's very dualistic. So that would kind of make sense, that there is like the material form is then feminine, but maybe the spiritual essence is more masculine / draconic.
And then also it has high levels of phytoestrogen. It's several plants in the, I forget what the family is of cannabis, but I believe a lot of those contain phytoestrogens, which is an estrogen-based, plant-based estrogen. And so again, the reaffirming feminine equality to it, I think.
Love it. And this is why I love the Occult Rejects, is because it's like OI, it's occult intelligence. I love
that.
all the great addition and contrasts and lessons that the Occult Rejects provide. And I mean, if it were a different world, we might have a certain daily requirement of cannabinoids. That's how integrative this stuff is with our biology, or rather necessary by our biology, right? So let's take a look at the next image. This is, I'm sorry that it's small. My bad.
It's okay.
Hopefully that won't happen again. But I can read it. I was going to read it anyway. This is from where we get the idea that the oldest profession is prostitution. And this guy was, of course, a Freemason. He was made a Freemason or joined the Freemasons when he was 20, and he lived, a lengthy life. Rudyard Kipling, he is the creator of what is still very influential material, The Jungle Book. And as an author, he is, you got to look at him as being prolific, but some of the things that he put forth are so barbarous that it doesn't matter how much he put out, because it's what he put out. And this is where we get this from a short story that he wrote called On the City Wall, about a prostitute who, check out her name. Her name is La Lune, which of course has the feminine the and lune for the moon. So I'll read the quote. The short story is dry and horrendous. You probably can't get through it, but this quote, talk about spell casting. La Lune is a member of the most ancient profession in the world. There it is. Lilith is an aspect of the divine feminine, kind of a polarity of Inanna or Ishtara. Lilith was her very great grandmama, and that was before the days of Eve. There's two feminine archetypes, as everyone knows. In the West, people say rude things about La Lune's profession and write lectures about it and distribute the lectures to young persons in order that morality may be preserved. In the East, where the profession is hereditary, descending from mother to daughter, which is just an insult, but probably was a predicament too, nobody writes lectures or takes any notice. And that is distinct proof of the inability of the East to manage its own affairs. Rudyard Kipling. Talk about spellcasting. La Lune is just automatic, this feminine tonation. And then there's Lilith and the great grandmama and Eve, and this whole idea of the profession. And so I feel like this is a total cultural spellcasting. And again, Rudyard Kipling was a prolific writer. Another thing he wrote is the next image is called a poem. And the main theme from that is, wait a second, the white man's burden. And how much has that phrase influenced the propensity for people to take action as order followers of the state in war? This was penned as an inspiration for people to join armed forces and go to the Philippines. during the imperialistic time period of the United States when we took over the Philippines, Spanish-American War type of thing. So this white man's burden was an idea that basically says, oh, well, we gotta go to war in order to better these people that are not white man. So Rudyard Kipling, wow, he put forth a couple of notions that have had us over a century of cultural put on. And that contrast of prostitution and the war order follower, I think is just worth noting. And he knew exactly what he was doing, not because he was a Freemason. I don't say because of that. Nick, let's check out the next one.
All right.
One of the things he wrote is obvious. He knew what he was doing. So there's just a little quote, and so there's that. This is a cultural put on, and I mean there's a lot of I think sometimes I might call it new age BS, but I think it's cultural BS that we end up, or maybe we hear people repeating, and it ends up being influential. When I first wrote this, one thing I conceptualized initially beyond the nursing idea was if cannabis and marijuana were legal. And it's funny, if you say marijuana, people actually take offense to that are in the cannabis industry, because this is a word actually used to demonize the herb. And in the Mexican Spanish presentation of that word, and it demonized it by demonizing people. Wait, they weren't white. There's that white man's burden again. And so it's a strange thing that word has some criticism in the cannabis realm, but
they
for
use,
reasons that are.
Sorry to interrupt, but they did.
Sorry?
Sorry to
Please.
interrupt, but they did use the fact. Well, they would say that if a black man used cocaine, he'd go psychotic. So that was also a reason. It was one of the many reasons why they were trying to legalize that as well.
Yep, that was.
There was a racist angle to that.
Yeah, and anyone that had melanin was likely to go crazy off of this herb. Was essentially what they were putting forth, and essentially the hysteria that got people to ban this herb that's been so integrated in humanity that we literally have the endocannabinoid system. Our nervous system needs it, one might say. So it's funny that words might anger people. I like the word marijuana because it has Mary in it, Mary Janus, if you will. But also when I said if marijuana was legal, and I started to explore if this were acceptable for the last many years, I got criticized for that too, because if you say if, you're not in the present. That's some new age BS that people put forth. If you're always in the if, you're not in the present. Therefore, that's bad. No, if you say if, you might invent something. You might do something different. How can you proceed a new way if you don't say if?
That is a good point. If then.
What was that?
No, I like that. I mean, that does make a good point. I mean, you'll never think outside the box or think differently.
Yeah. Another trope is the idea of your truth. Oh, Ethan, that's a cute book with marijuana and the divine feminine. That's your truth. No, it's not. I'm trying to explore the truth. There is no your truth, right? That's a misnomer to kind of ease people's feelings when they find out that things aren't the way they want them to be. Well, reality doesn't really care about our feelings. Another, many centuries long set of manure is that women are bad luck. Women can't go on the boat. Women this, women that, right? So I think it's important to understand what is womanhood and the divine feminine, right? And so that's another thing I explore. And Ma is in Egyptian is short essentially for Ma'at, and Ma means divine subtle perception, and Ma'at is the feminine goddess of this energy. If you add to anything in ancient Egyptian, it becomes feminine. So Ma'at is this divine feminine energy that is about goodness and from where creation comes, and judgment. She's divine judgment as well. She's one of the original or far back Ma gods that we can find. Again, marijuana has the Ma tonation too. And recently, when Mario from Symbolic Studies was doing his most excellent presentation on Venus, he got into the Ma tonation as being archetypal of the feminine. And I wanted to say, yeah, it's all about the weed, but I didn't want to change the subject. But he's on it, right? The matrix of creation, the divine feminine of Venus, and so many different iterations of her. We mentioned, or rather, Kipling, the Jungle Book creator, put forth the idea of Eve and Lilith, of course, and both of them are really from out of or corresponding with the tree. And so Lilith is almost, in some interpretation, you might find she's this polarity of Ishtar, Inanna, the Mesopotamian divine feminine. Mm-hmm. And they are, a tree is represented by a pole often. And both of them are synonymous with this idea. Ishtar, we're not sure 100%, but Ishtar or Lilith might have been presented with the claw talons, but were definitely associated with lions. That's one of the divine feminine animals or characteristics that come up is lion or lions. Not Judah, not the masculine aspect that we might associate it with, but actually the feminine originally. So there's let's see. Let's go to the next one.
Sorry, Ethan, do you mind if I just jump in really quick?
Please.
Because this is in praise of you. You said it, the thing about Lilith and Inanna, in like the least annoying, that's not really praise, but the least annoying way I've ever heard it described, because in the polarities, right? No, but it's true, because most people totally get it conflated. This is exactly how we understand it in Buddhism. She has different, the consort has different stages of her consciousness. So there are different polarities, different faces that she can wear. So this is, I just want to praise you, Ethan, for saying like a real praise that, that you're the only one who's really articulated it like that, where I wasn't immediately like, oh, this is wrong, or this isn't Kabbalistically right. No, this is actually the Kabbalistically correct way to think of it. It's in polarity. It's in dialectical relationship with other maybe elements of her, because you can say that the Ishtar figure, depending on where you place her in the tree, well, I'll say green Tara because it's a similar etymological name. So I always say it just said because blue-green Tara, just said blue-green. Okay, that totally makes sense. And she's mercy, obviously. So the infinite expanse of mercy. So She's always in perception. That's her thing. It's the third eye. So it's her looking at something and understanding what that thing is. So she can look at herself at that lower stage of conception, that kind of grandmother Barbello figure, and she can understand that that is who she was, or that it is who she can be. But it's all a choice of consciousness. So I just want to say I really love that, and I 100% agree. So you get my Jen stamp of approval.
That's great.
Can I add one more thing as well? So you were talking about Lilith, and when I associate femininity, I associate the moon, and you said loon. There's an old wives' tale, and I don't know how, I haven't looked it up, but that the sap of marijuana, at least my grandmother, she would talk about when they were kids, that they would see the adults soak marijuana and alcohol in these big jars. And then once it fermented, they would stick rags in it and then take the rags out and then wrap them around knees or elbows or whatever and help with, arthritis or anything like that. So there was an old wives' tale that she used to tell me that that marijuana, the sap, was influenced by the moon cycle. And I think when the moon is growing, like the sap goes upward, and then when the moon is, waning, that the sap goes towards the roots or something. Again, I don't know how true that is, but apparently the moon was influential on movement within marijuana itself. So it's interesting you brought that up.
Wonderful.
Sorry, Ethan.
Please.
I just want to say, Lisa, that totally makes sense to me if you're thinking of it astrologically, like in astro-herbalism. If we look at the Garuda Purana, hemp is classified as both an herb of Rahu and an herb of Ketu. So it's very interesting, like the south and north node of the moon, where the eclipse happens, he is the king of the eclipse. So very significant, obviously in a relationship with the moon at all times. And I would say because of the anesthetic, it is also the first anesthetic in TCM. Hemp seeds and hemp root. So this is what is really interesting. Was what I was trying to get at about the earlier comment on the galactagogic nature, the milk production. Is the roots actually have more, that's more feminine, they're cooler. Roots are usually the coolest part of the plant if you break it into like Culpeper sort of doctrine of signatures, like the nature of the plant. The roots are usually the cooler, but in TCM, the preference for hemp is really the seed, which is considered the oiliest and the warmest. So maybe you could say, and it's usually used as a laxative, or as an anti-parasitic as well. But the interesting thing is the roots really have none of those uses, and you would expect to see some of maybe that nature in the same plant. So it's interesting because that would be, they're white. They look like they look both like nerves and like the lungs. So both of those things in some ways could also be considered lunar, because all things lunar are anesthetic in a way. Like eucalyptus is a very lunar tree. It's like silver. It's high. It's full of oil. It has that kind of mentholated smell. That would be considered very lunar in a more Vedic maybe or a Buddhist way.
I was going to say there's no way that I could have come up with what are really, I think, basic principled understandings of very complicated mythology and relationship, Jin, without my knowledge of from my neophyte understanding of Buddhism and the Eastern polarities. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Tara, and of course my favorite is Green Tara, because she is really the nurse of the metaphysical, right? This page, I get into many different uses of the word Ma for mother, and also many different goddesses or spiritual characters that have the word Ma. And of course, in Cybele, is one of the Greek iterations of the divine feminine, and the Romans version of her is Magna Mater, the great mother. There is I'm gonna kill the expression a little bit with my English crudeness, but in relation to the divine feminine, there was a etching, what have you, found in Egypt. She is the one who gives birth to all, but bears none. And so this is kind of like the Gaia, the Maya idea coming out. Again, all of these being related, not necessarily limited to the tone Ma, but definitely it seems to be something that is a frequency, of course. Maha Maya is the mother of Buddha, just like Mary is the mother of Jesus, if you will. So there's all these wonderful, and Mary is, there's of course Mary Magdalene is the other beloved in the Bible. And actually, isn't that funny that Mary means beloved in ancient Egyptian? So where do we get this Mari from? Maybe it is, like so many things, from Egypt. So the Ma is the matron, is the maiden, is the provider, and so forth. And also, let's go to the next one. There happens to be one of my favorite gods or goddesses. There happens to be a goddess of marijuana, and her name is Magu. And she's a Taoist Chinese god. Ma is marijuana. It's not the feminine, it's marijuana. Gu is maiden or aunt, if you will. But in Mandarin, you have Ma Gu as the feminine goddess, bestower of immortality. She is also essentially the nurse. She is the herbal healer. On top of being the goddess of marijuana or cannabis, she's the goddess of herbal healing, one of them. And there's a few little facts about her. One of the neat things in Chinese mythos, the peach is kind of like the apple in the West. It is the fruit of immortality, or dare I say, as the orange in Florida. So it's the fruit of immortality. And there's one of the stories of her is she gets the peach of immortality. She had the bad dad essentially, and she's like a sweetheart, and she gets the fruit of immortality. Instead of using it for herself, she gives it to this elderly woman, and by that act of kindness, gets immortality herself. To your point about when people harvest certain aspects of marijuana, talk about this little occult or esoteric aspect of Magu. She comes down to the mountain. She's talk about a polarity that comes up frequently: mountain goddess and sea goddess. And she comes down to the mountain on the 7th day of the 7th month. And this is the day that she recommends one harvest the hemp, marijuana, cannabis on the 7th day of the 7th month. So
that's interesting.
Really, really, yeah, I thought that is interesting.
And how many points does the marijuana leaf have?
Well, it mostly has 5 or 7, but I think 7 at the most.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I think it depends as the shaders get older.
Yeah, so
probably 7. Yeah.
Go ahead, Lisa.
No, you're right. Well, there's the 7 again, right?
Yeah. Go ahead, Lisa.
And so yeah, she of course she's carrying a branch of the peach tree with immortality associated with the tree, and it is from China more than likely, where we all get cannabis. India is probably the most famous of Asian places that had hashish and bang. And what else do they have? Shoma or soma. And surely the soma from India, which is this drink that we don't really know what it is, but we speculate it was cannabis and a psychedelic and so forth. But soma is more than likely named after gu, as marijuana and cannabis came from China more than likely. And so whenever you hear that they were really trying to get the spice, like that was a big thing, like, well, maybe it was the weed. I could see them doing it for weed. I don't know. So I try to be funny. Let's go to the next one. So Magu, we have the marijuana goddess.
It was smoking the weed that
shown
inspired
China-
even getting the herbs, Ethan. That's what it was. The spices and stuff. They
That's
were
what
like,
I'm
yo,
saying.
I want to start throwing.
Like,
We got to
okay.
try cooking with this. When they're all stoned
Yeah,
out.
like you always heard, like, oh, they had to make the spice trade happen. You don't even know all this.
That was all for
the-
flavoring when they're stoned.
Yeah, they had to get pepper. You don't even understand. No, they needed weed, bro. The pepper and turmeric was a bonus.
So like, yo, throw some pepper on that shit when you're stoned.
So it's hard to argue because back then this was just another commodity. Actually, the taboo on it was not as widely popularized, right? But things happen. Here is just a depiction of what were hash houses or whatever in India. This was, forgive me, I forget the artist, but point being that I find interesting is we have the tree and then the dualistic houses, which how we're gonna get more into the polarity, Jen. We're gonna go there. Oh wait, go back.
That was awesome.
And again, my apologies that that's a small image. This is Ashura, or Anet, or Ashtara. There's that Tara, like the divine Tara in Buddhism. Ashtara,
Etymologically
Anet.
related. I know you know that, Ethan. I just want to say that it's just really important for
Thank
people
you.
to hear that those are the names they're etymologically related. So sometimes, like when I'm talking about Himalayan things, it's talking about those Near Eastern things. It's just different conceptualizations of those same stories.
Yes.
Love it.
Thank you for adding that, Jen. And it's especially in regards to the divine feminine idea, it's been kind of mishmashed with all these political and other ideas that might be spiritual or might be repressive, all these different ideas that make it actually quite hard to track some of the relationships. The etymology, the word phraseology is one of the things we can really find the direct relationships. So this is Asherah, the divine feminine. It's a fragment of a pottery piece, obviously, but notice again, there is Asherah in between two ibex, two wild goats. And Ashtra and all the divine feminines, as we spoke about with Lilith, are all related to the tree. And the tree, of course, is the pole. And getting to the polarity. All right, let's see what we got next here.
Yeah, this one looks interesting.
Cannabis comes from, is a Greek iteration of kane bosom, which cane, like reed, and bosom meant fragrance. And here we see this polarity of potentially, not so far of a step reading into it. We have the mercy and severity and the equilibrium in the tree of life with the dual ibex again. Let's go to the next one. So one of the aspects of the divine feminine that we're really missing is Asherah. And again, she was associated with the tree of life and the ibexes. Here we see a tree of life and the ibexes. Asherah was one of the really more overtly understood, eliminated divine feminine archetypes and characters that we can see really when monotheism started to be permanently or more thoroughly instituted. We can see Asherah was a direct victim of and was eliminated. And it says so in the Bible. Let's go to the next one. This is a picture of Magna Mater. And just to see another example.
What do you think is up with there's got to be something with this. And I asked the tour guide at the Vatican, and the answer she gave me really didn't answer anything. There has to be something with that, with this 1 foot pushed forward all the time. There's got to be something with that, or with only 1 foot. Sometimes you only see 1 foot sticking out. There's got to be something up with that. I just have a feeling.
Jen, did you want to say something?
Well, I've actually thought about this a lot because a lot of Buddhist statues have the dakinis or the goddesses with, as you even noted before, Nick, when we've done shows together, is they always have like something with the feet.
Yeah, I think when we did the Kabbalah, the original Kabbalah or something like that, I think when you were showing your images, I was like, yeah, what's up with the feet? Because I've seen that in other places.
So,
yeah, sorry.
Absolutely. No, don't be sorry. Absolutely. So after you said that, obviously I think about it more. Obviously I know like my maybe 2 layers deep Buddhist explanation, but I think there's also a Kabbalistic layer. And so I have a theory that perhaps the prominent foot is the placing on the Sephira of primary importance for that deity, or their kind of how they express into the world. So you could say in this position, it's Netzach, but there is obviously an element of Hod, which is interesting. And to bring it back to cannabis and to the astro, like herbalism from the Garuda Purana, is that there's an interrelationship with Rahu and Ketu between Mercury and Venus, both, as well as with the moon and the sun. It's those 4 planets always, they have the closest relationship to him. So I think that's really interesting. If you think of it like the dragon is something of her, maybe it swims around her, and so her foot position would infer that. Maybe I think you can make an argument that that's true.
I love that. There's also in many different Hindu statues, forgive me the term, and Buddhist statues, there also might be the one folded leg as if in meditation, and the one grounded leg. And that's supposed to mean being in the spiritual, but useful in the physical, right? Like you don't want to only meditate and not help people. In Chinese, there's this expression that goes step to the left. And it essentially means get out of the box. Get out of the box. Think to the left, which is the spiritual and the metaphysical. So I think that relates also to in Egypt, they would always look to the rising sun. And so in reference to the Nile was left, right? That direction. So their whole thing was to be you'll see Egyptian statues also put the left foot forward. Sometimes the right, not always the left, but often enough they'll have 1 foot forward and it's the left. Not that those are all interrelated, but just interesting ideas. Um, and in Tai Chi, it's important too that actually the same idea, left foot forward first, in when you do it the more traditional direction, left foot goes first. Same with that expression of step to the left, think out the box, and that's what I tried to do here. Step to the left. Let's go to the next one. And here we see a Phrygian super primordial presentation of Magna Mater, pre-Roman. And look, wait, what does she have there? Oh, those are two lionesses again. Beautiful. So we have the bosom and the lions. And again, at this time, bosom does not mean what we think about it today, but it did have a meaning, and it meant fragrance, like cane bosom. So I just wanted to show the lions there. Let's go to the next one. And here we have the bashing of an Asherah pole and Asherah tree. Asherah, excuse me. And this took place during the Reformation of Hezekiah, thereabouts. And the Bible verses have many different enunciations about this occurring. They got rid of Baal and they got rid of Asherah altogether, any other god, right? And so it really, this is where this idea, thou shalt have no other gods before me, comes into play, because Yahweh takes over. And that expression kind of, really says, well, there are other gods then. And yes, there were. El and Baal are all up in the Bible, Baal as Lord, and of course Yahweh is too. And Asherah, Ashtara, and Anet, and all these different vocalizations are interrelated energies that sometimes are described as consorts of one or more than one, and sometimes they're described as relatives in maybe 3 different generations. They're essentially interchangeable masculine and feminine ideas. Yahweh took over, right? That's all that happened. But we see Yahweh is the severity pillar. And it says it right in his whole existence is as a storm god and a storm god of creation. Well, how does that happen? Well, that's the polarity. All right. So poles and pillars and altars at that time period all represented gods. And let's go to the next one. I got a couple biblical quotes in here. Nice. He removed the high places, which is interesting because one of the places where we found cannabis in Israel is on a mound. It was at above a village that was there prior to the citadel was constructed after the village. And the word mound in Hebrew is tel, like Tel Aviv. And that's the first translation. Hill is the second, of course. So they found actually a citadel and a temple where this seemingly did take place. This biblical reformation and rejection of anything mentioning any other god or goddess. For those who are listening, he removed the high places, shattered the sacred pillars, polarity, and cut down the Asherah poles. He also demolished the bronze snake called Nehushtan that Moses had made. For up to that time, the Israelites had burned incense to it. Let's go to the next one.
Bronze snake.
So at this, I'll read this one. Tear down their altars, smash their sacred pillars, burn up their Asherah poles, cut down the idols of their gods, and wipe out their names from every place. So this is all about a reformation that really changed the pagan polytheistic group, and even maybe dualistic God worshiping groups into one wayism, right? There's only one God, and there's only one way to perceive that. All right. Let's go to the next one. This is likely an early depiction of Yahweh before it was totally prohibited to not only mention the name, but to, of course, depict the idol. Some people refer to this imagery as actually a donkey-headed god. The Canaanites and Judeans and Israel was basically a bunch of mountain folk relative to Egypt. And there is this whole political back and forth where it's possible that the design of this donkey-headed god was based on saying to to Egypt, that our God is like your Set. Set, the donkey-headed god of Egypt, that is the god of chaos, that does such trickster moves with Osiris, right? So the donkey-headed god and goddess, you can see next to the bigger figure, there's nipples there. That might be a tail, but we don't have to get into what that is. But anyway, so let's go to the next one. So we see in this time period, there is this whole back and forth that, is similar to all kinds of back and forth that really has made it difficult for us to keep track of the relationships and all these things. But there are archetypes that we can find, right? This is likely an Asherah altar that was not destroyed. And I'll read this quote. They demolished the sacred stone of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal, and people have used it for a latrine to this day. And this is another archaeological find that they have noticed at a bunch of different sites where there was a temple that wasn't following the new way of the Reformation. They literally put a toilet on top of it. So they were wild. No, talk about base. All right, let's go to the next one. Please.
Really, really quickly. So you mentioned donkey, and then you had mentioned previously ibex, and so I've come to know ibex as a mountain goat. And so when you said donkey, I was like, well, they prefer to use donkeys or mules like on mountainous or rocky terrain. And so I was wondering if there was like some sort of correlation with
I think so.
a mountain goat and then using a mule or a donkey, in that I know they're two different, but that they have sure-footedness is what they're, I guess, quote unquote, why they're used. If there was some sort of association with that as well.
Well, I haven't seen the polarity that is presented with the ibex in pairing, or even there's dual pairing sometimes, but this idea coming from two sides and eating of the tree. I haven't seen that with donkeys. But there is a very interesting site, the Tellerrad site that I mentioned before. It means wild donkey hill, or wild ass hill. That's I just like to say to get a laugh, but they I'm sorry for my crudeness. They did have a reverence for them, obviously, as agricultural beasts of burden. I don't know that there was a direct relationship with the donkeys relating to the ibex necessarily.
Gotcha.
but it makes sense. And it's interesting that this site that we're going to explore, Tel Arad, means wild donkey hill, and that donkey was so prevalent. And I think in we're probably to give it's basically a shit post in the ancient world, right? Like to call your god the donkey that is the chaos of the Egyptians. Okay.
Sorry, Ethan, I want to jump in really quick here. So to kind of respond to both of your point, like Lisa and Ethan's point, is that the donkey is considered to be a wrathful vahana, a wrathful vehicle. So a donkey is a peace binding or peace unbinding vehicle. So when you see a deity riding a donkey, usually it's the smoke of destruction. So the destruction of all matter behind them. So there's an idea that it's like Mary riding the donkey. It's like that she's binding Jesus the covenant. Right. She's binding Jesus the covenant.
During Palm Sunday. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. I didn't think that. That's great.
Beautiful.
And then the black buck is interesting because one of the first wrathful Indian goddesses, like origin is the subcontinent. She is called Kauravai, and she's a Dravidian goddess, a South Indian goddess, and she rides a black buck, which is also an ibex or ibex relative. And she's a very ferocious goddess. One of the first to ever really be depicted like that, like with like skulls and like heads and like wearing skins and like a very tantric looking goddess, but this is pre-tantric. But it carries over because the goddesses who ride donkeys who came later on, they're depicted as the same kind of ferociousness, garlands of skulls, like skins, all of that. So I think that there is a relationship in the sense of ferociousness and like the left-handedness, you could say, of those goddesses. I also pulled up, I don't need you to pull them up, Nick, right now, or we can do it right at the end. But there is a tantric deity who has a donkey's head. And then there is also like Durga in sort of normative, I guess we could say, goddess Hinduism. She rides a lion. And sometimes she's depicted as riding like a chariot with multiple lions pulled up. And so I just, if we have time, if we don't, that's okay. But I want to say that there's some really interesting connections I think Ethan's getting at.
Something I wanted to mention real quick. I don't know if there's really much to it. I was trying to look it up, and I'm assuming with a goat, when it comes to altitude, it might be able to climb in areas that donkeys can't. But they both can withstand like high altitudes. So I'm wondering if that even has something to do with it. And I know when you get to that, when you start going up, there's less oxygen as well. So I mean, I'm just even looking at something interesting, physical or special about animals. In that sense.
Wasn't marijuana found in the mountains when it was first found, like archaeologically? Am I wrong about that? In the Caucasus Mountains or something? Sorry.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I would underline though I forgot to mention the Magu goddess of marijuana and hemp from China or the East. She is the goddess of the mountain and the sea. The same with Ashura, and many different iterations of the divine feminine, which is just another one of those things. It's like, wait, that's almost abstract, but they both have that same abstract anyway. So this site, let's go to the next one here. And just another iteration of this template. And there's the bull too, which, of course, that's very much associated with fertility and even the divine feminine as well. Another aspect of, how the Jews, the Israelis and Judaizers put their God to be like Set. There's also many different descriptions in the Bible that one could associate with the rejection of not only paganism, but Egypt specifically. The bull being Hathor, another divine feminine, and the golden calf, right? There's that whole story in the Bible, and even that old serpent, right? Well, who has the old serpent in that area? Well, certainly Egypt, among others. So let's go to the next one. Here's Kadesh. This is an Egyptian goddess, and she has two consorts, but so she's a combination of Asherah and Egyptian ideas, and she is on the lion. So there's that feminine aspect again, and she has two consorts, but we see that pattern of the center and the two poles again. I believe the gentleman on the right is the Canaanite, and on the left is the Egyptian. So that whole area was such a mishmash of peoples, right? We like to think that things are clean and coherent until a certain year. Well, no, it was not even coherent in place. Like, it's all a mishmash, and they were all adopting and utilizing variously and rejecting variously each other's ideas. So let's go to the next one. And here's some other depictions of more divine feminine, and some other biblical references. And on the right, we see that face again in the belly with the statue of no face.
Like that pterodactyl guy mentioned that, right?
Yeah. Very, very interesting. And then there's, I believe that's Isis, and a snake goddess that's so old they don't know the name of her. But again, there's a pole, and then this one thing on each side, and of course her bosom showing. And I'll read these real quick. He removed the high places. Wait, I think I said that already. And I said that one already. Okay, move on to the next one.
You're good.
Excuse my disorganized. Okay, and here is the discovery at Tel Arad, or Wild Donkey Mound. And this really represents essentially what happened in the Bible. And we see here that this is a recreation. When the archaeologists found the site, as they were digging it up, these pillars were set down gently, maybe, but they were covered up in dirt and buried, probably the day after that they were used. And they assumed this because they found residue of plant matter on each of these pillars. On the larger, and again, pillars represented gods. Unformed rocks, we don't know exactly what they meant. In the background, we see the other pair of monoliths, if you will, but they're not sure exactly what they meant, but definitely pillars represented gods. And we see what is this Solomon era temple that was actually designed in the same format as the Temple of Solomon, and maybe not the same dimensions, but the same structure, entrance room, one little room, and then here we see what was the Holy of Holies. And it was essentially the perfect hotbox room. And they had frankincense on the taller pillar, which represented Yahweh, and they found eventually that it was cannabis burning on the secondary pillar. So this whole biblical institutionalization of smashing the second pillar was done so in correspondence with smashing cannabis. At this time period, they would have had to have imported cannabis on a state level, or at least some sort of grouping mechanics. It wasn't just like your boy got you covered. No, like it had to be come in a serious shipment, right?
It took planning, right?
So it was total planning, and since then we've had the banishment and belittling of the feminine aspect in all sorts of predicaments, and even the further banishment of the feminine pillar. And we see in some interpretations of the dual pillars that were outside of Solomon's temple, even those ones, there's a female pillar, but guess what? He's a guy. They have the guy has feminine attributes, but they won't even call him a girl. And so same thing with like the Trinity in the Bible of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. No, there's no mom, there's no girl. And so eliminated. And so the whole reformation from polytheism or dual theism was partly the first prohibition of marijuana and cannabis as well. So when they instituted monotheism, they got rid of marijuana and consider the ability to consider the whole feminine pillar, right? And imagine the institution of the Kabbalah dual pillar idea as just basic understanding of teaching, where now we know we just have one wayism of the severity. Let's go to the next one. I'm wrapping up now, I think.
Lisa, did you have something you wanted to say too?
No, just that is so fascinating that I had heard about the second pillars always being destroyed. I had never heard that marijuana was found on the second pillar, especially in this area, and it, yeah, just mind blown. Sorry, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I'm so glad that I could share that with you, and it's a lesson, because now we realize that all of this, there's so many aspects to it. I don't even need to get into it, but just losing the dual pillar in our ability to conceptualize things is drastic.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not overtly eliminated, but just in the institutionalization of the one-wayism, and when we learn about the Asherah complement or consort, then we realize how much thinking might have been influenced. The Asherah parties were something I think we would all like to partake in, because they made cakes. They got together and baked cakes, and of course, marijuana and cannabis, it needs the heat to release it. And so I just speculate that they were having cake parties and worshiping Asherah. It sounded pretty cool. It sounds pretty cool. I have a Bible quote. The children gather wood, and the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto other gods, that they may provoke me to anger. Ooh. So they got rid of the cake parties, and now, I mean, that's the idea of the bun in the oven. I mean, Jen, you know all the alchemy ideas, allegory with the cake idea. We kind of touched on it recently. And so it's just, there's the bun in the oven, the divine creator. Asherah was said to be the mother of 70 gods of the Canaanite pantheon. Interestingly enough, 70 and 72 is the very title of the first Bible written in Alexandria. Why is the title 70? What is that? What sense does that make? Surely it was evoking a relationship to the 70 Canaanite gods that Asherah gave birth to. The story is that this Bible's name was named after the 70 Hebrew scholars that translated it. Well, I've never heard of a book being named after the translator. That makes no sense. So I'm sure they were evoking the 70 of the Canaanite pantheon. Here's one of their latrines that they did at so many sites that they didn't find acceptable. Which surely there was all kinds of stuff going on, and probably a lot of it was unacceptable. But just to point out that dual pillar concept is really valuable. And so, okay, that's they put a latrine on top of the temple at many different spots all through the east. Let's go to the next one. I think they were more for show and not for use, right? But they were to illustrate, we made a toilet of your zone. And here's just another picture of the Holy of Holies at Tel Arad with the dual pillars there, the one smaller being the feminine. And Lilith, she is the oldest biblical character, actually. The oldest character in the Bible, what precedes Yahweh, more than likely. And there's the whole Mesopotamian story with her, and that we touched on with the tree. But in the Bible, she's mentioned as Adam's first wife, and she is rejected as she wants to be equal to Adam, and she's not. Adam says no. So Lilith has she's like one of the first, rejected and accused feminine, and to that she's also associated with spellcasting. Rudyard Kipling once again. So Tel Arad site. Let's go on here. I'm wrapping up now, and I apologize if this.
No, not at all. Not at all. You got me thinking about a lot of stuff actually.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Another pillar or pole or Asherah pole, and when you look into Asherah, her symbolism and her name is associated with the pole and the pillar and the tree of life. But I think they're kind of missing the point. No, she's not associated with all those things. She is a pole of the tree of life. That is hence missing, right? So she's not just an arbitrary pole. She is the feminine pole. All right. We can go to the next one. And bosom. There's the bosom again.
Yeah.
Right? If we look into the word bosom in our modern day usage of it, it is not the same as cannabism, the original name for cannabis in this area that's been used as a sacrament and medicine for so long. We have the endocannabinoid system now. It was, oh, sorry, brain fart. Where was I going with that? The grove, the Asherah grove and so forth was, all part of the same thing. So sorry, brain fart, but let's keep going. It might come back to me.
Yeah, I was too busy trying to run bosom through Gematrix.
Oh, thank you. The bosom, right? So the etymological origin of bosom that we can relate back
I love it.
or doesn't go to cannabism. We can't find it, but it goes to Germany, where it stands for the womb and the breasts. So whether or not cannabism is related to our modern day usage of it is arguable, but certainly we see that cannabis cannabism are that bosom is related to cannabis, right? Because the divine feminine, the tree, and literally cannabis, as used by Asherah, is all part of the same. So it's very likely that bosom does come from that bosom. And who wears the fragrance? Usually it's the beautiful dame, right? The beautiful maiden. So it's very possible, but we can't say with certainty that these are related. Let's go finish up here.
I kind of want to just insert
Go for
that there is a lot of work being done on looking at the cannabinoid receptors in mammary and uterine tissue. Just
sure, and I've seen
of the fetus.
Wait, could you say that again?
Because it assists with brain development of the fetus.
Astonishing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, so I mean, it is literally if for the last 2,000 years Asherah and cannabis had not been so taboo, we might have the daily requirement of cannabinoids along with vitamin C. And I'll tell you, I've written about some taboo topics, and nothing irritates the Karens and Darrens more than the suggestion that cannabis is representative or symbolic to anything, let alone something so woo-woo sounding as the divine feminine. But I think we can come to a conclusion based on fact that one way or another, whether it's the biology of the wonderful human milk, or if it's the history, or if it's the spirituality, or if it's the resource, we can see, cannabis is the divine feminine. So don't be leaf, be the bud. I was going to say too, the pursuit of the feminine and masculine energies of the plant, right? The really intoxicating vibe, right? And women, when we love them, how intoxicated do we get, right? Is the bud, the blossom. And the more masculine use for rope and construct material resource, that the hemp plant is just fine, or rather the male plant is just fine. So the cane, the bosom cane, where the cannabis is the bosom cane, very likely. So let's go to the next one. Okay, I've been obsessing on the circumpunct, and I wrote that article about the circumpunct, and here we have a Freemasonic depiction of the circumpunct. That, look what it has: a center being the circumpunct, the circle with the point within the circle, and then the two pillars. There it is again, the same motif that you guys know way better than I. This dual pillar and equilibrium tree, right? And there it is, whether it's Asherah and Yahweh, which is a really powerful way to comprehend it, or any number of dual pillars that unfold in different history and different concepts throughout all these wonderful spiritual teachings. There it is. And I think it's really limited if we only have that one severity pole, right? If we add Asherah, things start to open up, and we can find balance, I think, a little bit easier. And again, I love you guys so much. I appreciate you guys letting me share that.
Oh, yeah.
And I love marijuana too. So
Go ahead, Lisa. Did you want? Oh, Lisa was getting ready to say something.
No, I think that, Ethan, thank you. That was an amazing presentation. Like Nick said, I wrote a whole bunch of notes, and I've pulled up a whole bunch of tabs looking into a lot of different things that it never even dawned on me with that stuff. But in one thing that I will say, as pervasive as it is with the mother being essential to the creation of humanity, it is astonishing that the human body has cannabinoid receptors. So that means that we had to somehow interact with the concept of a cannabinoid, right? Whether it was in the plant or naturally produced, or we all produce it, right? And so it doesn't matter where on the globe that, or whatever, the earth, that we exist, that we all possess that link into each other, almost like the mitochondria, like it's passed down maternally. We all have it. And so it's interesting that is part of our makeup.
Yeah, it's biological proof that we've been really kind of interweaved with this plant for so long. And, you know, of course, it has the divine feminine attribute. It also is very much like what a lot of people might talk about as the philosopher's stone. There's nothing we can't make from it. What can you think of? Well, let's do it. We got the weed. It literally is such a powerful resource that it's the philosopher's stone. You want a medicine? You want a cancer cure? You want to get ripped? Okay, let's do it. We got the weed. So yeah, it's such a powerful plant. You know, one I call the idea the big if. One if about marijuana and cannabis and hemp, if it were legal, we would have public service commercials recommending you litter to enliven the soil. Because if we had hemp and marijuana, hemp plastic, which is not only feasible, but it really should be, because the plastic we use now is totally not integrated with our biology, is totally poison, and it breaks down into what we might consider a whole new era of poison with all the plastic particles that they're finding are in our biology. So if marijuana and hemp were legal, we'd have no problems with plastic as far as it poisoning us. And they would have little things. Hey, make your soil better by burying your plastic in your front yard. Don't forget to litter. So here we are, where we create toxic poisons, and we're in that severity lane, right? Even when we try to do something good, well, we have to go in there and destroy it all first. We have to be, there's got to be a severe aspect to it. Even, you know, I mean, we're all against the war on drugs, but like, why is there a fucking war on drugs? Why don't you just help people that need help?
You know,
now we got a war.
Just to enter real quick, and this is an extremely myopic view, but I remember, at least from my family, talking about the war on drugs and how it was an attack on the Hispanic culture. It was an attack on the Mexican culture, especially in Texas. And I believe that this was used in a way of manipulation or control of the migrant worker that was coming across to work the fields in Texas, and that if you were threatened with, we're going to call Border Patrol if we find marijuana on you, or, you know, there's a suspicion on marijuana, then you will get deported, or you will get what have you. And so I remember all of that being talked about when I was a kid, about how marijuana was so synonymous with the Mexican, or the Mexican culture, or just ethnicity. To be honest, but I don't know much more about that. I do know that it was demonized a lot in Mexico, and that the people in Mexico, I think they said that it was and I may be completely wrong, so I apologize, but that it was also demonized as a way of associating with the indigenous people as well. And in Mexico, I apologize if this offends anybody, but in Mexico, there is a huge discrimination against the indigenous. It's bad here in the US, but I believe in Latin America, there is a clear divide between the indigenous and lighter skinned Hispanics. So to demonize them further, I could see that happening. Again, I don't know if that's completely incorrect, but that's how I remember the stories being told to me.
No, you're absolutely on it. And there's the whole history of, if people want to look into it, they call it yellow journalism, in respect to engaging national prohibition of cannabis and hemp and marijuana in the United States. And it all started with this irrational idea that, foreigners are bad. I mean, we see this all the time throughout history, and the United States media just was doing that. The first state it was made illegal in was California, possibly because it was a threat to a great big paper.
Yes.
The paper businesses back then were huge. And again, one of the promoters of this yellow journalism, of course, owned the newspapers. So he had every reason to discount hemp, marijuana, and so forth at the cost of anyone that was deemed different at that point in time. So
I think you make a really sorry, Ethan.
No, please, Jim.
I just wanted to say that you make a really good point about the paper in California, because California is actually, if you're thinking like what would be the best geographic position to grow cannabis, and obviously the Northern California is very famous for, these kind of off-grid grow ops. It totally makes sense, because that's what cannabis is. It's really an alpine, but then you have a coastal, as you were saying. There's like a paradox, you could say, between sea and like the valley. So yeah, it's a mountain and a coastal herb. So that's where you would really want to grow it. And I just think that's really interesting, because you're talking about like William Hearst and his paper empire and yellow journalism, and it's like what we're kind of all living through right now in a way, because it's very decoherent. Nothing's really the truth, and it's hard to know what anything even means. And that's also very marijuana like, right? If we can say it's very like the smoke of Ketu. It's like the kind of like smoke of like not knowing quite the contours of reality, but at the same time, you're able to kind of think around things. So maybe the contours are it's just a guideline. It's not really it's not really a set framework. It's something you can move around. So that's what the benefit of smoke is, I think.
Yeah, well said. And to that, it's a very left-brained herb, right? It really gets us thinking in maybe you might think of it as circular pattern, kind of encapsulating everything. I believe the Vedics refer to it as a herb that enables concentration, where we think it's like, it makes you distracted and fuzzy. No, it enables concentration on one thing really well, but maybe it's hard to go from thing to thing. Lisa, sorry.
No. I interrupted, so I apologize. But the other thing and I was going to add to this, it was also a threat to big oil. So I remember that big oil was a huge, they were spending lots of money in lobbying against the use of hemp once I think Henry Ford had tried it out on one of his Model Ts. And I think he liked it or something. And so I believe that there was an active campaign against hemp as well, along with
Absolutely.
Other things. But
yeah, Henry Ford famously made a car from hemp, right? There's your philosopher's stone again. And Rudolf Diesel designed his diesel engine to run off of any oil, and most particularly hemp, because it is the most oily plant. But he designed his engine to be able to run off of petrol oil too, but not only that. So that's how amazing the diesel engine is that that's why you hear about them getting fryer oil. Throw it in there if it has the proper rubber that might be ate well by different acids. So the diesel engine was really arguably designed for hemp, not petrol. Again, the most oily plant there is.
That is interesting.
One other thing. I think I have one other picture, maybe.
Okay.
That's my.
Right. I was going to say
Let's see if
something
there's
before
one.
we got to Jen's pictures.
No, please.
Oh, no, you go. You finish up.
Oh, that's just the same idea. That's just the same idea. The middle pillar of three with the two poles, with their capital and their base. So with the 2 points. The circumpunct is associated with Keter, right? And so it's kind of the highest and most upfront. So let's see. I think that's it. I might be one or two. Okay, here's Brother St. John. Again, one has feminine attributes, but we don't even want. We have the Baptist and the Evangelist Johns here, the dual pillar and the circumpunct and the Book of Life action on Earth. So yeah, again, here's another pillar of modernity talking about the same thing, but wait, no feminine. Nope, they got rid of her. But same idea as even the twin ibex at the tree, right? So, and there's the feminine and the circumpunct. There was one other picture. No, that's it then. That's it. Okay. Wonderful.
Listen, no, thank you. One thing I did think of, it's not like really so much, I think on the marijuana thing, but it was something as you were talking, I guess like leaving out the feminine in certain ways or not looking at it. And you're talking about like the pillar even being kind of like leaned over. Just for me, like I do think when it comes to magic or occultism, I do think sometimes like just the way people look at it, they tend to leave out one of the sides. But oh shit, we just lost Jen. But I do think in some ways, not to get into it or get too deep into it, but I do think there's a lot of things when it comes to the feminine aspects that is just hidden in magic, or I think is a little bit more of a deeper understanding or more occulted. And just like some ways, like even I look at it is that like, you know, you always hear about the fall of man. Well, you know, ladies, you had something to do with that as well. You have two energies that are falling down the tree that's going to eventually manifest. Both of them are going to have to go back up. And like sometimes I do wonder if like, just from even looking at other people that I've covered recently and looking at the way they look at things, could like Lucifer kind of been the fall of man, and Lilith was kind of like the fall of the feminine energy, which ended up coming down to end up creating human, because they weren't happy and wanted to create something on their own. They wanted to take control.
That's it.
Yeah. So, but like I could just look at it as the tree, those two polarities falling down and eventually coming into, you know, form. But like, you know, as a magician, I guess what I'm getting at is that in order to go back up the tree, you have to go with both. And I always think it's just sometimes lopsided and not really, I think, fully understood with the both sides, in my opinion. I don't know. So I just, you know, you kind of, when you were talking about like the feminine energy and that one pillar and falling down, it just made me think about all that stuff.
That's a dope relationship. That I never thought about those two being masculine and feminine oriented and both being disrupted. And now we have to develop. We have to develop ourselves. We have to go back up. It makes a lot of interesting sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at a magician, he has to create balance, and he has to use both sides to do that. I kind of like I a lot of times I kind of equate it to like taking, I guess, like the DNA strand and actually untwisting it and coming apart from each other. Kind of have to like undoing the caduceus and actually creating the two separate pillars without the entwining. And you're gonna need, you know, a twist tie. You're gonna need both sides to work together to undo what's been done. That's my opinion.
That's dope.
You said something that, Nick, Lilith was equal to Adam in that she was created from dust and clay, just like Adam was, whereas Eve was created via a rib or, modern day. And so in essence, not just for the sake of argument, is that Lilith was equal and she was the opposite side of the same coin. And so when you're looking at the two being opposite of each other, you want two that are equally opposite, not one over not the foot in front of the other, but you want both feet at the same time, right? And so same thing, Lucifer, in that I've talked to you at length about this. It almost, the whole thing about, Lucifer, she sounds like a female. She got pissed off because God told her that she was going to have to love that guy over him and serve him, and God was going to love that guy more than her. Yeah, that's total female energy quality right there. But and so if this sounds really bad, but if you were to look at Lucifer and God, you would almost, Lucifer's not, I guess, biological, right? He's more supernatural. And so now you have a whole nother hierarchy as well. And so, yeah, I everything you said makes sense to me. Sorry.
Thank you. I was hoping it would. Someone. No, but that was like
that's the occult.
Yeah, I mean that was even stuff that I got out of a lot of Jacob Boehm's stuff just from going through his like interpretation of Genesis and just other things. Is that I think he was like kind of seeing like when Adam fell it was Lucifer and when Eve fell it was like Lilith, or something to that extent. I could be wrong, but I just thought that was really interesting to look at it kabbalistically to look at it that way. Go ahead, sir.
I totally don't apologize, Nick. I thought that was really deep. Like I said, deep as fuck. I wrote it down. So yeah, I think it was. I even I drew a little dragon and a lightning strike because even though we tend to, as sort of like part of the, you could say, mythopoesis of the show, we tend to talk about the lightning strike often. Yeah, the tie side is the dragon. So it's exactly like what you said. It's the stretching out. I'm going to use a really new age term. Don't tie me to this, but the Kundalini, it's kind of like you're
perfect,
right? Like the dragon, like you're opening it up. I wouldn't use that word.
I think that's great.
I'm just going to use it to describe.
No, that works.
And you just said that triggered something. The feminine is tied with the snake, and the male is tied with the lion. Abrahamic religions are tied to a lion or even eagle, whatever, and you have the crushing of the serpent in almost like a crushing of the femininity or a crushing of belief system. In that I was told, and I think I said this in another episode, that the Mexican flag, when you have the eagle eating the snake, it is the conquering of the European influence over the religion of the indigenous. And so you almost have that hierarchy, this overpowering of a belief system suppressing the other. So that reminded me of what Jen and Nick, what you were saying.
Yeah, you nailed it. That was well said.
Yeah, what you said, Lisa, was really deep as well, because often, as I've said, it's like the eagle is the civilizational, it's the civic, it's like the solar, it's the state sort of, it's the ritual animal of the state. And the snake, especially in Tantra, is considered to be the holder of the secret teachings. That doesn't mean that they come from them. They don't come from them, but they live in a subtle world. So they're more comfortable with subtle things, like subtle words, like sorcery. That's the idea. And what the eagle teaches, and this is true also for like Canadian Indigenous people, is like the eagle teaches like medicine. It teaches like ceremonial things, like that kind of stuff, like how to treat each other, rules, justice, all that stuff. What the snake teaches is like the subtle body things, like certain herbs that are maybe too toxic for like the rest of the tribe or the normies, or they teach those subtle things. It's dreaming. That's really what it's considered to be. The snakes are sort of in that dreamy interstitial world. So yeah, I think what you said, Lisa, was really great.
Yeah.
Oh, Jim, we lost your pictures because you fell off. Do you want to upload them again? We can go over.
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's all right. You probably didn't even think about that.
I
just realized now. I was like, oh, they're gone. Oh, it's because he disconnected probably. Yeah, I didn't even think about it until now. Awesome. I like this one. We'll go with this one first since it's up. I'm ready. There we go.
So this is an awesome picture, actually. It's an awesome statue. So this is a Himalayan statue of Gadarbha Mukha, Chakrasamvara. So donkey-faced time wheel king and his consort. So usually he does not have a donkey face. This is considered to be extremely uncommon form. He usually has what's called a Mahavira's face, which is like a ferocious, kind of like it's a man, but it's like kind of he's got like a demonic smirk and maybe fangs, but he's not evil. He's just like ferocious, right? Like he's killing all the demons, or he's literally standing on the Time King and the sort of Lilith figure that we were even talking about. He's literally standing on those two figures, like a Baal, like a storm god character, and his wife. He's standing on them. And then so you're going to say, who's he holding? Well, that's his consort. So if for Chakra Samvara, usually the consort it does not have an animal head. Now, some people will say it's Vajra Varahi, who is the sow goddess. So that would make sense, right? You have a donkey face and then a sow. But the donkey-faced deity in particular, then she actually gets a different animal head. So I think that that's really interesting, and it's usually a camel. But it's text dependent, it's image dependent. I can't say like every single time it's 100% this, but it is really interesting because it shows that there's an apotheosis, like there's a sort of leveling up of the characters. Just even if you just consider it at a mythological or like ontological layer, like the characters themselves can become something greater, not only than they were before, but even in their own consciousness. They can like purify their sins. They can like rectify the world instead of always destroy it. It's kind of like the synthesizing, but then letting it go at the same time. It's both things. It's like that. It's the polarities working in synthesis rather than in opposition.
That's what I think.
Beautiful.
That's what I think going up the tree is about. The work in synthesis.
Well, that's definitely like, that's Dath or Kether. I mean, there's no question about it. That is considered to be like the highest or one of the highest yoga, Anuttara yoga deities of them all. So that's definitely what's showing. It's showing liberation from the cube, really. Because we don't really have it, like, we don't really consider it like a trap, right? We're not like fully Gnostic in the sense that we don't reject the worldly body or reject material things, but we acknowledge that part of it is Mahamaya. Sure, it's illusory, it's part of life, right? Things come and go, it's ephemeral, but you know, it's we also embrace that there's like a spiritual world, but what is that? That's largely of your own mind. So, you know, all the things that we show in iconography is really about us, but it's like how people want to understand it. Most people are more comfortable with the external mythic layer, we'll call it. So that's a better way to explain it for most people.
I like this. All right, we'll pull up the next one.
Thank you, boss.
Oh yeah.
So this is exactly, you know, this is exactly what Ethan was showing, like with the lions, like with the primordial one, or with the, you know, the newer images or the Egyptian images where the two guys were standing and then there was the female polarity in the center. I mean, that's exactly what everybody saw. So this is Durga. So her name actually means fortress. So I'm sure Nick will be like, yo, Netzach. Yeah, exactly. Netzach. It's, and even her colors, green and red, like very Netzach with a purple background. So, you know, and so her husband is Shiva. So he's on, if you're looking at the image, she's on our left side, or he's on our left side. So that's her husband. So her equivalent. And then on her right, or what is our right side, is Vishnu. And you can even see Vishnu has a symbol like a U, like the polarity, because he's not her equal. He's the dragon. He only terminates in what you could say is Hokmah. He can't go any further. That's his terminus. That's as far as he can bring you. She gives you the range of options. She says, okay, you can reincarnation, so samsara, liberation to a higher God world, usually for people in lower consciousness. They just want to be, you know, a deity up there. Or moksha, liberation from the cube. So she offers all three options. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know. That's all I had. I was thinking a lot of what Ethan was talking about, but
that image is so beautiful and so mind-blowing relative to the equilibrium and the pillars and the lioness. It's absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I like this.
No, thank you, Ethan. It was an awesome show. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing show. Really fun.
Yeah, I like this. I don't want to get stuck in that. Sorry. That's a pretty cool image.
I was getting stuck in it. I was,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry. That was pretty.
That image is mesmerizing.
Yeah, like counting the hands and all this other stuff.
And it all has meaning. That's the interesting thing. It all means something.
Yeah.
It's all relative. Sorry, Lisa.
I was looking to see if it had a third pair of wings. I saw 2 pairs.
Oh, I see that too. So that's really interesting. That's maybe a too long a story for this episode, but we can definitely discuss it. What I did want to say is the guy with the U on his forehead, Vishnu, he actually rides a Garuda. So I was saying that he is the dragon. The dragon is broken into 2 parts, a gross body, Rahu, and a subtle body, which is his tail, which is Smoky. So it's like a comet. But he rides, his Vahana is actually an eagle or a space eagle, which is what a Garuda is. So they're able to travel through space with the thunderclap. So that's sort of his thing. He's space and Shiva is time. And she's kind of the unity in between those 2 things, because in order to unify both space-time, you need creation, you need formation, you need matter. That's why matter is not really evil or good. It's kind of neither nor. Just like she's neither nor. It just is.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, dude. Yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
thank you,
Byron.
Ethan. Yeah, for sure. Wow. Lisa or Ethan or Frater, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
The latrine thing was really interesting because you could consider that very tantric, since that is one of the tantric offerings. I'm just saying it is one of the 5 wrathful offerings. So it is interesting that even as a conceptual thing, and obviously in a lot of the Discordian and chaos magic work, they say, oh, okay, read this verse in the Bible backwards. And it's not necessarily to be satanic like how most people would understand. It's really to break the preconditioning of your mind if you hold those things as being sacred, or if you're kind of like experimenting to give those things up, but you still retain kind of that supernaturalism, that kind of, I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying that you can understand conceptually it's kind of the same thing. You could say it's like a proto-tantric kind of thing to like break the connection with that deity. But it's interesting because the storm god is the father of tantras. So he's the one who's actually the creator of them. So if they're I know people will say they're antinomian, they're not that antinomian. They're the inverse of the normative. They're not the inverse of the normative. But if you consider them, you could say that those practices that seem inversionary or against the heterodox, you could say, they're not really against him. They're more conceptual layers to understand him. So maybe that's also what she offers. Like when Ethan was talking about it, like at her temples, it's like those ways of her aeon or her time, like when her worship is prominent, it seems to be like she brings all the 3 methods together. There might be just a diverse polytheism, like India is a great example. There's a diverse polytheism, but kind of the Shakta Hinduism, the goddess Hinduism kind of brings them all together because they have to kind of worship her a little different because the texts are a little different for her. So they have to understand her in like almost like a different context.
Oh, that just reminded me of something I did want to bring up, like probably like the first 20 minutes of the show. Said something about context and whatever. It made me think of this situation. We talked about at the beginning, kind of like, the whole prostitute idea. And we touched on Mary Magdalene. Hold on. Sorry, I had a cough. It wasn't until 1591 where Pope Gregory, in his homily 33, which is rather interesting, was she ever considered a prostitute. It wasn't even from the Bible. And if you go like kind of and look at where he's pulling from, if you were to go and look at the Bible, you'd realize that the 2 women aren't the same woman that he's associating. Like, it's not even the same two women. Like Luke, I think 7 something is when they're talking about there's some woman with the sinful woman anoints Jesus' feet. In Luke 8, when she pops up, it's not even the same woman anymore. So, I mean, it's the whole idea of her even being a prostitute, first off, is never from the Bible, and in my opinion, it's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
Well,
Great point.
Yeah, amazing point, boss. Just really quick, that I think that's really interesting that you say that, because in the hypostasis of the archons, it is said that the archons said that about the daughter, about Nuria. It said that they said, oh, we essayed your mom or your mother. So we did that to Eve, we did that to Lilith, and then we did that to you, or they threatened her. And then she goes to the angel, and then the angel tells her, like, no, everything they say is a lie. So I always thought that was so interesting that Pope Gregory did do that, because he accused her of the thing, and in Kabbalah they call this the Aishat Zenunim, it's the virgin who dances provocatively. So, but she's a virgin. She's always a virgin, like no physical contact. But she maybe is around sexual things happening, but nothing happens to her. So I thought that's also interesting, because there's like that kind of like Sabbatean, they go very wild, very inverse.
Mm.
So,
and it was homily 33, which is like suspect already.
Yeah, it's like maybe he's prefacing the son. That's kind of what I think, because in Tantra, the idea is the resolution of all paradox is in the consort. So it's always in the two, right? That's how you resolve all the things, like resolve the polarities, bring them into synthesis. So he's just saying it's in the son, but in a more Gnostic or Tantric way, maybe we would say it's in both of them, Mary Magdalene and Jesus. I'm not saying that they're a couple. I'm just saying I think it's a more Tantric idea to say that, yeah, they are. Or at least they're complementary to each other.
And to Jen's point, in the Gnostic text, and Nick, we touched upon this a little bit, in that the Gnostic text, they asked Jesus why he confides in Mary Magdalene so much, and that he indicates that she understands without having experienced it, and that she understood the cognition of it, what he was trying to say in terms of his magical experience whenever he died and came back, or some of the magical experiences, the mystical experiences that he experienced throughout. And so if you have a female that has a higher cognition than the rest of the disciples, I could see the jealousy or the stifling of what she was saying. Because if you read her gospel, whatever, and then you compare it to the others, it completely is polar. Like, I mean, it's bipolar.
Yeah.
And
that
so
definitely, the church definitely wouldn't have wanted that.
No, absolutely not. You did not have a middleman. You were your person, and you were having your own mystical experience. And then the other thing is that when I think about marijuana and its effects on the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, that is the main region of cognition. That is the main region of emotional development, emotional decision making, all of the things that allow you to be perceptive. And I know there is a thought that, females are more emotional, and they have more of that synapses available to them, probably associated with puberty or anything like that. But that part is overdeveloped, and more so, rightfully so, because they are in charge of the rearing of children and what have you. So they would need that to help, perpetuate the species. But when you look at marijuana and how active it is on that prefrontal cortex, on that amygdala, on that hippocampus area, it just reiterates how much, the femininity of its activity in the brain, I think. It also works on the base stem and the spinal and analgesic. And I think on the center part, it has more of a relaxing, calming effect. But you do have a lot of the effects on the prefrontal cortex. This is why you have the talks about how prepubescent children or puberty children should not consume, because that's when you're having that actual development. It's like the initiation of during puberty. It's the initiation of all of your emotional development, behavioral development. And so when you introduce something that you already have receptors for, that is the concern, that you might have different wiring. Not to say that, whatever, but, so that's the scientific talk. Blah, blah. Sorry.
Beautiful.
That's interesting to think about the significant.
When
parts
you
of the
go
brain.
to American, oh, sorry, Nick.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
No, sorry about that. When you go look up cannabis seeds on for TCM, the first link that pops up is American Dragon. So it's a very famous, if you're a TCM practitioner, very famous website, because he actually goes through all the classical uses. Anyways, one of the first keywords that comes up for what it's used for, and Chinese uses are slightly different than Western uses, so it's not one-to-one, but one of the first keywords is lubricant. So if you're more practical or pragmatic, obviously you're going to think, okay, lubricant for your GI or something for like to go out. But you can also think of it but it's not really a directional herb, which is really interesting. It doesn't really have a natural force. Some herbs are considered to be very expelling or emmenagogic, like they force things out. They force things to happen in the body. Whereas cannabis seeds, specifically, the oil actually goes all over. It kind of flows everywhere. So I was thinking when Lisa was talking about the brain, I was like, yeah, that would actually facilitate it would stimulate electrical impulses, right? So that is really interesting when you think about it, because it would deaden some areas and enliven others.
And then you have cannabinoid receptors all over. And just the fact that you have cannabinoid receptors on your immune cells, the CB2 receptors, what they call them, the fact that you have a specific cannabinoid receptor on your immune cells, to me, is just mind-blowing in and of itself.
That was interesting what you said about the oil. And it sounds silly, but I really do think I think it was Minerval. At the end, there's a copper plate with shit on it. I forgot what's on it. It's probably a pentagram and a bunch of bullshit. And it's probably important, but I just don't remember. And they put salt and oil on there. And I do swear that there's some sort of science on that thing. It's not just. And you're talking about the electricity and the salt and the and oil, and I'm thinking of salt. I feel like they're in the copper. Fucking Jesus Christ, copper. I don't know. I just feel like this
copper is the base for all chemical reactions. They always pretend it's gold. They always lie. They always say, "Oh, it's gold. It's gold." No, it has to start with copper. You must have copper. It's the foundational base for all of that. Would make sense because Nutsock is material reality, right?
Yeah, and again, I also think it's around the area of the optic nerves. So I do think there's electricity going on around that. In my opinion. And what's going on and what's presented to you in that initiation. But any of you got anything else? It's 2 hours. That actually flew by, Ethan. That was a lot.
Great.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, hell yeah. I guess if we're all done, Lisa, real quick, do you want to say anything? What's up? Thank you very much for jumping on with us as well. Sorry. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation.
Of course.
Ethan, that was an amazing presentation of your book. I definitely took lots of notes. Jen and Nick, thank you so much for having such a great conversation. And check out theoccultresearchinstitute.org. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Lisa. And thank you for joining us. Always appreciate it. And Frida Jen, the Ninja.
Thank you so much, Cardinal. And obviously, thank you, Lisa. And thank you so much, Ethan. And really, I just came in support. I didn't even mean to speak so much, but every time Ethan says things, I always am like, oh, the connection here. And then Nick says something, then Lisa says something, and I'll use a quote from a recent show. We weave things together. So that happens. And we synthesize. And so thank you so much. And it was an amazing show. And everybody check out Ethan's work. And I have contributed one piece, but it is a relatively like extensive, but yes, a long time ago, but it's on herbs. So I just want to point that out is like people think I'm talking about like astro herbalism as like being so woo. No, astro herbalism is actually the basis for all astrology. So that's why when Nick, I was secretly and I guess nervously laugh when Nick brings up like Nazis and plants, because I'm really into plants too, but it's a little it's the same it's a similar autistic energy.
I think it's
really
just
what it
really
is.
magicians and plants, put it that way. All right.
It's 'cause they
Because
were
you can
onto
understand the
something,
whole
that's
cosmos.
why. Mhm.
Well, it's
the same
something
thing, right?
that the herbal tonics and elixirs are so powerful. They can really change mind and body proficiently. Still, I think that's another kind of herbalist thing that got chastised by the whole rejection of the feminine and so forth. That was awesome, you guys. I knew you guys were going to teach me more about this
Stop.
idea. So thank you very much. And please, everyone, check out my book
Hell yeah.
to give to someone who thinks it might be woo and maybe blow their mind with the fact of the matter, marijuana and the prohibition of the divine feminine. Thank you guys so much for always adding, building such great ideas.
No, thank you, man. You brought the presentation. That was awesome. Like I said, it flew by. Yeah, everybody's links will be in the bottom, and definitely go check out Ethan's books and go check out all the posts that he's done on occultresearchinstitute.org. They're all great. That was the end of another Occult Rejects, and until the next one, everybody be well. Later.